If you enjoy my videos, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps my channel grow, and I will make more good videos for you.
Rohan had always believed that moving to a new city meant starting over. The towering skyscrapers, the bustling streets, and the endless sea of faces were intimidating, but something inside him whispered that this was the beginning of something new. Leaving behind his old life was both thrilling and terrifying. He didn't know what awaited him, but he hoped it would be better, more vibrant, more alive. On his first day exploring the city, Rohan wandered into a small, cozy cafe tucked between two tall buildings. It was the kind of place where time seemed to slow down, the air rich with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries. He chose a corner table by the window, pulling out a notebook to jot down his thoughts, hoping to capture the feelings swirling inside him. As he sipped his coffee, the bell above the door chimed softly. A woman stepped in, and for a moment the room seemed to brighten. She wore a flowing dress in a shade of deep emerald that caught the light beautifully. Her smile was radiant, like a beam of sunlight breaking through a cloudy sky. Rohan's heart skipped a beat, not just because of her beauty, but because there was something about her smile that was genuine, inviting, and full of life. She ordered her coffee with a cheerful voice and glanced around, her eyes landing on the empty chair across from Rohan. With a polite nod and a shy smile, she asked, "Is this seat taken?" Rohan shook his head, suddenly feeling a flutter of nervous excitement. "No, please go ahead." Her name was Maya. They started talking, and what began as a simple conversation about the city and favorite cafes quickly blossomed into something more meaningful. Maya was kind and outgoing, but there was a subtle mystery about her, an undercurrent beneath her bright eyes that made Rohan want to know more. Over the next few days, Rohan found himself seeking out the cafe, hoping to catch another glimpse of Maya's smile. She greeted him each time with the same warmth and a hint of playfulness. Their friendship grew effortlessly, filled with laughter, shared stories, and quiet moments where words weren't needed. One afternoon, Maya took Rohan on a walk through a nearby park. The sun filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the path. They talked about their dreams and fears, about the places they wanted to see and the lives they hoped to live. Rohan was captivated by Maya's spirit, her strength wrapped in gentleness, her laughter carrying a melody that made the world feel lighter. As days turned into weeks, Rohan realized he was falling for her, not just for her smile but for the woman behind it. He loved the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about things she cared about. He loved the softness in her voice when she shared a secret. He loved the way she made ordinary moments feel magical. But there was something else, something unspoken in Maya's gaze that tugged at his heart. He sensed she carried a burden, a shadow she kept carefully hidden. Yet she never pushed him away. Instead, she let him in just enough to feel close, enough to hope that maybe someday he could help her heal. One evening, as they sat watching the city lights flicker on, Maya leaned her head on Rohan's shoulder. The world was quiet around them, and in that silence he felt a connection deeper than words. He knew then that this was only the beginning of their story, a story of love, trust, and the courage to face whatever truths lay ahead. Days slipped gently into weeks, and with each passing moment the bond between Rohan and Maya grew stronger, like two rivers slowly merging into one. What had started as casual meetings in a cozy cafe had blossomed into long walks beneath golden autumn skies and quiet evenings filled with easy laughter. There was a comforting rhythm in their togetherness, a delicate dance of hearts learning to move in sync. Rohan found himself looking forward to every moment with Maya, drawn not just to her radiant smile but to the tender light behind it. Yet amid that warmth there was something fragile, a quiet shadow that flickered in her eyes when she thought no one was watching. One late afternoon, as they sat on a bench overlooking the city park, the air cool and crisp with the promise of approaching winter, Rohan noticed Maya's gaze drift far away, lost in a sea of memories. She traced delicate patterns on her coffee cup, her smile softening but never quite reaching her eyes. "Is everything okay?" Rohan asked gently, his voice barely above a whisper. Maya hesitated, then looked up, meeting his eyes with a courage that surprised him. "I've been through things I don't usually talk about, but I feel safe with you." That moment marked a turning point. Slowly, Maya began to share fragments of her past, a childhood colored by fleeting happiness and sudden loss, moments of joy shadowed by times of loneliness. She spoke of a family that had once been whole but was now fractured by secrets she could barely understand. Rohan listened with a heart full of empathy, his hand reaching out to cover hers in quiet reassurance. He didn't rush her, didn't press for details she wasn't ready to reveal. Instead, he offered his presence, steady, unwavering, and full of love. "You don't have to carry it all alone," he said softly one evening as they watched the stars blink to life. "Whatever it is, I'm here. Whenever you're ready." Maya's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she smiled, a smile that was real and raw, touched by hope. It was the first time Rohan saw the woman behind the smile, the one who had endured pain and yet still chose to shine. As the days unfolded, Rohan became attuned to the subtle signs of Maya's struggle. Sometimes she would withdraw into herself, her laughter fading into silence. Other times she would confide in him moments of fear and doubt, her voice trembling but determined to be heard. He wanted nothing more than to protect her, to shield her from the shadows that haunted her past. Yet he knew that healing could not be forced. So he held space for her pain, offering kindness without judgment, patience without pressure. Their friendship deepened into a sanctuary where both could be vulnerable without fear. Rohan shared his own dreams and fears too, weaving their lives together with threads of trust and understanding. One chilly evening, as snowflakes began to fall softly outside the window, Maya rested her head on Rohan's shoulder. There was no need for words. In that quiet embrace, they found solace, two hearts entwined, ready to face whatever truths the future might hold. The days in the city were growing shorter, and the chill of early winter had begun to settle into the air. Rohan and Maya's friendship had deepened into something tender, something unspoken but understood in every glance and quiet moment they shared. Their connection was like a delicate flame, fragile, warm, and fiercely guarded. One evening, after a day filled with laughter and soft conversations, Maya invited Rohan to her apartment. It was a cozy space, filled with books, plants, and touches of her vibrant spirit. The golden light of the setting sun spilled through the windows, casting gentle shadows across the room. There was comfort here, a feeling of home that Rohan hadn't known he needed. Maya busied herself in the kitchen, preparing tea, while Rohan settled onto the plush sofa. His eyes wandered around the room, absorbing the small details. The framed photographs on the wall, the delicate ornaments collected from her travels, the stack of journals resting on a wooden shelf. Curiosity stirred within him, gentle but persistent. He wondered about the stories Maya held close, the memories she kept locked away. She had begun to open up in recent weeks, but there was still so much she didn't say, secrets hidden behind the brightness of her smile. As Maya returned with 2 steaming cups, a soft knock sounded at the door. Startled, Rohan glanced toward the entrance, where a small box had been left. He stood to retrieve it, but as he reached down, his hand brushed against a worn leather-bound book tucked behind the shelf. It was a diary, old, with frayed edges and a lock that had long since been broken. For a moment, Rohan hesitated. He knew this was private, something deeply personal. Yet the pull to understand Maya, to know her more fully, was too strong to resist. He glanced around. Maya was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared the tea. The room felt safe, the moment still, as if the universe held its breath. Slowly, almost reverently, Rohan opened the diary. Pages were filled with delicate handwriting, the ink faded but still legible. As he read, the cheerful image of Maya began to shift, revealing layers he hadn't expected. The entries spoke of fear and loneliness, of nights spent crying silently and days filled with quiet desperation. There were words about betrayal, people she had once trusted who had hurt her deeply. The diary was a window into a soul wrestling with shadows far darker than the smile she showed the world. Rohan's heart ached with every word. Pain was palpable, raw, and honest. But amid the sorrow there was also resilience, a fierce determination to keep going, to find light in the darkness. He felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him. This wasn't just the woman he adored. This was someone who had battled storms he could barely imagine. The diary was not just a record of pain, it was a testament to strength. Suddenly, Maya appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide with surprise. She saw the diary in Rohan's hands, and a flash of fear crossed her face. "I'm sorry," Rohan said quickly, closing the book. "I didn't mean to." Maya shook her head, a tear slipping down her cheek. "It's okay. I didn't want you to see that side of me yet." Rohan moved closer, his voice gentle. "Thank you for trusting me, even if it wasn't in words. I'm here, Maya. All of you." She nodded, leaning into him, letting herself be held. In that embrace, the walls between them crumbled, and for the first time, Maya allowed herself to be truly seen. The diary was a secret no longer hidden. But with its unveiling came a new kind of love, one born not from perfection but from understanding and acceptance. The days that followed felt heavy and uncertain. What had once been an effortless closeness between Rohan and Maya was now suspended in a fragile silence, like a thread stretched so thin it threatened to snap at any moment. The warmth in their conversations had cooled, and the bright light in Maya's eyes flickered behind a veil of guarded sadness. Maya's discovery that Rohan had read her diary had opened a wound she wasn't ready to face. Though she had allowed herself moments of vulnerability before, this felt different, an invasion of the sacred space where she kept her darkest fears and memories locked away. To her, it was as if he had crossed a line she hadn't yet invited him to cross. The first time she saw him after the diary incident, she barely met his gaze. Her usual radiant smile was absent, replaced by a subtle tension that wrapped around her like a protective shield. Rohan felt the shift immediately. He wanted to reach out, to explain, to beg for forgiveness, but every attempt at closeness was met with a quiet withdrawal. One evening, as the city lights twinkled faintly through the rain-streaked window, Rohan sat on the edge of the sofa, watching Maya across the room. She was curled up with a book, her expression distant, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the edges of the pages. The space between them was filled with unspoken words, questions hanging in the air like fragile glass. "Maya," Rohan began softly, his voice tentative. "I'm sorry for reading your diary without asking. I was curious, but I never meant to hurt you." She didn't look up. "It wasn't just the reading, Rohan. It's that you saw parts of me I'm still trying to understand myself. It's like you saw a side of me I've been hiding and it scared me." He swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling deep in his chest. "I understand. I just want you to know that I'm here for you. Not just the parts you want me to see, but all of you, the pain, the fears, the secrets." Maya's eyes finally lifted, shimmering with unshed tears. "That's the problem. I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. Sometimes I feel like I'm still figuring out who I am." Rohan nodded slowly, the ache of uncertainty filling his heart. He knew he had to respect her boundaries, even if it meant stepping back. But stepping back didn't mean letting go, not of her, not of the love growing quietly between them. The days stretched on, and their encounters became brief and polite. Rohan fought the urge to push too hard, to demand answers or closeness. Instead, he focused on small gestures, a cup of her favorite tea left at her door, a gentle message checking in, a smile shared across the room. Maya noticed these acts, and though she remained distant, a small part of her heart softened. She wanted to trust him, to let him in, but the fear of being vulnerable again held her back. One afternoon, they met by chance in the park where their friendship had blossomed. The air was crisp, leaves crunching beneath their feet. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of the unspoken heavy between them. Finally, Rohan broke the silence. "I miss you, Maya. Not just the smile, but the real you." She looked down, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I miss you too. But I'm scared, Rohan. Scared that if I let you in, you might leave when you see all the broken pieces." Rohan reached out, gently lifting her chin so their eyes met. "I'm not going anywhere. We're not perfect, and neither are our pasts. But that's what makes this real. That's what makes us worth fighting for. Tears spilled down Maya's cheeks and she leaned into his embrace. The fragile thread between them wove back into something strong, woven from trust, patience, and the purest kind of love. Together, they began the slow, tender journey of healing, understanding that love sometimes means holding space for the pain, even when it feels uncomfortable. 'Cause in that space, true connection blooms, deep, honest, and unbreakable. It had been nearly a week since Maya let herself rest against Rohan's shoulder in the park, that one moment of truth where vulnerability met love. Since then, something inside her had quietly begun to shift. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. The walls she had built, layer upon careful layer, had begun to crack, not from force, but from the patient warmth of someone who didn't flinch when faced with her pain. They began spending time together again, cautiously at first. Long walks returned. So did their shared coffees and quiet conversations in the golden light of the late afternoons. But the air between them was different now, gentler, more intentional. Maya still carried her silence, but it wasn't as guarded. She was trying, and Rohan saw it in every glance, every pause before she spoke. One evening, as clouds gathered in the sky, they sat together in Maya's apartment. Rain tapped gently at the windows, and a soft fire crackled in the corner. Maya had pulled out the old diary, the one Rohan had found, and placed it between them on the coffee table. "I want you to read something," she said quietly, her fingers brushing across the leather cover. "But this time because I'm giving it to you." Rohan looked at her, uncertain. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "It's time." With gentle hands, he opened the diary, flipping past entries he had already read until Maya stopped him with a hand on his wrist. "Start here," she said, pointing to a specific page. Her voice trembled slightly. "This is the part I've never told anyone." He began reading. The handwriting was the same, delicate but firm, the ink darker this time, like the emotions behind it had soaked deeper into the paper. "I was 17 when it happened. My family looked perfect from the outside, respectable, admired. But inside, we were all pretending. My father had secrets, ones he thought he kept hidden. And my mother, she knew, but chose silence over shame." Rohan felt his chest tighten as he read further. "One night I heard voices, my father arguing with someone. I crept down the stairs, and what I saw, it broke something inside me. He was with someone else. Not just once, not just a mistake, but a betrayal that had been going on for years. And when my mother found out, she left. Just packed her bags and walked away, leaving me behind with him." Maya stared at the fire, her voice quiet as she spoke alongside his reading. "I stayed because I didn't have a choice. I was still in school and he wasn't the same after that. He became cruel. Cold. Every day, I lived with the knowledge that the man who raised me had destroyed the one person I looked up to." Rohan reached for her hand, holding it tightly as he continued to read. "I thought I was strong. I told myself I could forget. I smiled through the pain, I laughed when I wanted to scream. But I couldn't forget how abandoned I felt by both of them." A tear slipped down Maya's cheek. "My smile, Rohan, it became my shield. If I smiled enough, maybe I could fool myself. Maybe I could feel normal." Rohan placed the diary aside and turned to her, brushing a tear from her face. "You don't have to smile through it anymore. Not with me." She leaned into him, the tension in her shoulders slowly melting. "I didn't want you to see that part of me. The broken part. But it's there. It's always been there." He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "Maya, everyone has shadows. But love, real love, doesn't fear the dark. It walks through it with you." She exhaled shakily, wrapping her arms around him. For a long time, they just sat there, tangled in silence, the storm outside echoing the one they had just weathered inside. The next day, Maya surprised him by asking to visit her childhood home, a place she hadn't returned to in nearly 5 years. Rohan agreed without hesitation. They drove in quiet companionship, the city giving way to smaller roads lined with memories Maya had long tried to bury. The house stood as she had left it, too clean, too quiet. The air inside smelled of dust and time. Her father was gone now, having moved away. What remained was the shell of a life once full of pretending. Together they walked through the rooms. Maya pointed out where she had cried in secret, where she had waited for her mother to come back. In her old bedroom, she picked up a small photo frame, a picture of her, younger and hopeful, standing between her parents, who wore the same practiced smiles. "I used to believe in that picture," she whispered. "I thought it was real." Rohan took the frame gently and placed it back on the shelf. "You don't have to believe in it anymore. You're not that girl now." "No," Maya said, meeting his eyes. "I'm not. And I think I'm ready to start again." They left the house hand in hand, the door closing behind them not just on a building, but on years of pain that had weighed down her heart. Back in the city, Rohan surprised her with something of his own, a blank journal wrapped simply with a red ribbon. "What's this?" she asked, smiling curiously. "A new diary," he said. "For new memories. This time ones we'll make together. No more hiding. No more pretending." Maya looked at the journal, then at him. There was love in her eyes now, pure and clear. The kind of love born not from perfect beginnings, but from seeing someone at their most vulnerable and choosing to stay. "I don't know where this path will lead," she whispered. Rohan smiled. "We'll walk it together." And in that moment, Maya finally believed she could. Sunlight streamed through Maya's apartment, golden and warm, touching everything like a soft blessing. The space felt lighter now, not just because of the weather, but because something had changed between her and Rohan. After sharing the shadows of her past, Maya had found herself breathing easier. The weight she had carried alone for so long had begun to lift, one piece at a time. Rohan had become her quiet strength, not demanding, not pushing, just being there. It was his presence that anchored her. And with him, Maya began to feel like maybe, just maybe, she was worthy of being loved, not for the smile she wore, but for the girl behind it, scars and all. They spent more time together now. Not everything they did was grand or dramatic. Often it was the simplest moments that meant the most. They cooked together, him always burning the onions, her laughing at how he still couldn't crack an egg properly. They took long walks through the park, where Maya would slowly open up, not just about the past, but about her dreams, ones she had shelved for years. She wanted to write again. Poetry, maybe. Something raw and honest. "You should," Rohan would say every time, without hesitation. "Your words deserve to be heard." One afternoon, they found themselves sitting on a rooftop, the city buzzing below and the sky stretching wide above. Maya leaned against Rohan, her fingers playing with his. "You know," she said softly, "I never thought I'd get here. Not just with someone, but with myself." Rohan turned to her, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Where is here exactly?" She smiled, not the bright, perfect smile she used to wear like armor, but a gentle one, real, unpolished, and beautiful. "Somewhere I feel safe." He kissed her forehead. "You've always been strong, Maya. But strength doesn't mean carrying pain alone." She closed her eyes for a moment, letting his words wash over her. She had spent so much of her life fighting, hiding, surviving. But with Rohan, she felt something different. She felt seen. That evening, she brought out her old journals. Not the painful ones she used to hide, but the ones filled with unfinished poems, snippets of stories she had written before the world turned dark. She sat beside Rohan on the couch and let him read them. It was the first time she had ever shared those pages with anyone. He read them slowly, carefully, as if each word mattered. "These are beautiful," he said after a while, his voice filled with awe. "You write like your heart is speaking." Maya looked down, a blush coloring her cheeks. "I used to believe in magic when I wrote these." "You still can," he said. "Because love is a kind of magic too, isn't it?" And somehow that simple sentence made her heart ache, in the best way. 'Cause it was magic. This quiet love between them, built not on perfect stories but on broken truths and steady hands. They made new rituals together. Every Sunday they'd write something, just a paragraph, a poem, a feeling. They didn't critique or judge. It was simply about sharing pieces of themselves, one word at a time. And every time Maya wrote, she peeled away another layer of fear. It was healing in the purest form. One evening, as the rain tapped gently on the windows again, Maya looked at Rohan and said, "I want you to meet someone." He raised an eyebrow. "Who?" She hesitated, then smiled softly. "My mother." It was a big step, one she had avoided for years. But something in her had shifted. Maybe it was time to let the past breathe. With Rohan beside her, the idea didn't feel so terrifying anymore. They traveled to a small coastal town where her mother had started a new life. The reunion was emotional. There were tears, many of them, but also forgiveness. Maya finally said all the things she had been holding in her chest. And when she looked beside her and saw Rohan waiting patiently, she felt more grounded than ever. "I'm proud of you," he told her afterward, pulling her into his arms. "That kind of bravery, it's the rarest kind." "I couldn't have done it without you," she whispered. Rohan shook his head. "You did it because of you. I just walked beside you." The trip changed her. Her eyes seemed brighter, her shoulders less tense. She laughed more freely, danced in the kitchen when music played, and began writing every day. The healing wasn't sudden or perfect, but it was real. And with every passing moment, their love grew deeper, not from grand gestures, but from trust and tenderness. One night, under a blanket of stars on their favorite rooftop, Rohan took her hand and placed something small in her palm. It was a silver ring, delicate, simple. "This isn't a proposal," he said quickly, smiling. "I mean, not yet. This is just something to remind you of now. Of how far you've come. Of how much I love you exactly as you are." Maya stared at the ring, tears blurring her vision. "You always know what to say." "That's because I'm always listening," he whispered, brushing his lips against her fingers. She wore the ring from that day forward, not because of what it meant about their future, but because of what it represented about her present. About love that was patient, kind, and built on everything real. And for the first time in her life, Maya didn't feel like she was pretending. She didn't feel like she was surviving. She felt like she was living. The morning light touched Maya's face like a whisper. She stood by the window of her apartment, her fingers wrapped around a cup of chai, and her eyes following the golden hue of the sky stretching wide over the city. The world looked calm, but what truly felt peaceful was the silence inside her, the silence that had once been so loud with pain, doubt, and broken memories. Now it was soft. It was hers. And she had learned to live with it. Behind her, Rohan stirred in the kitchen, humming a tune as he prepared breakfast. The scent of toast and scrambled eggs filled the space. She turned, watching him with quiet affection. This had become their rhythm, unremarkable to the world but deeply sacred to them. When he noticed her looking, he smiled. "You're staring." Maya walked over and leaned against the counter. "I like the view." He handed her a plate and kissed her forehead. "And I like seeing you like this. Peaceful. Real." Maya chuckled softly, sitting at the table. "You know, there were times I thought I'd never find peace. That my smile would always be a lie. But it isn't anymore," he said, taking the seat beside her. "Now it holds all the things you've survived and all the things you've chosen to love again." Her fingers gently traced the silver ring on her finger, the one he had given her under the stars, the one that wasn't a proposal but something that had meant even more. A promise without pressure. A symbol of love that gave her room to breathe and become. They had come so far. Later that afternoon, they visited a bookstore nestled between quiet streets. Maya loved the place, not because of the books, but because of the memories it held. It had been her hideout during the hardest times. Place where words saved her, page by page. Today, she wasn't here to hide. She was here to share. The owner, an elderly woman with kind eyes, greeted Maya like an old friend. "You're glowing, my dear." "And you've brought him again," she said, nodding at Rohan with a smile. Maya smiled back. "I have something for you." She reached into her bag and pulled out a manuscript. "It's my first collection. Poems and short pieces. Raw and real." The woman's eyes lit up. "Maya, you wrote again?" "I lived again," Maya said softly. Rohan stood beside her, pride glowing in his eyes. She didn't just write, she bled truth and stitched it into poetry. That night they celebrated. Nothing extravagant. Just music, dim lights, and laughter. Rohan cooked, well, attempted to, and Maya danced barefoot across the living room, the kind of carefree movement she hadn't known in years. She pulled him toward her, their fingers intertwining as they swayed to a song neither of them recognized. "I love you," he whispered in her ear. She closed her eyes. "I love you too." The words didn't feel rushed or heavy. They felt like home. They talked about the future that night, casually between kisses and quiet laughter. Rohan spoke of opening a small creative studio where she could write and he could design. Maya imagined a space with windows and plants, soft rugs, and shelves filled with books. There were no perfect plans, just shared dreams. A few weeks later, Maya decided to visit her father. It wasn't forgiveness she sought, it was closure. She didn't want to carry the burden of silence anymore. Rohan offered to go with her, but she gently refused. "I need to do this alone." He kissed her hand. "I'll be waiting when you're done." The visit was short. Her father had aged, his eyes dull with regret. They talked, just enough to acknowledge the past. Maya didn't cry. She didn't shout. She simply spoke her truth, and when she left, the air around her felt lighter. That evening, she walked back into Rohan's apartment and without a word wrapped her arms around him. "It's done," she whispered. "I know," he said, holding her close. "I'm proud of you." That night, she slept deeply, no nightmares, no echoes of the past. Only dreams of what could be. Spring arrived with gentle breezes and blooming flowers. They took weekend trips, clicked photographs in sleepy towns, read poetry to each other under trees, and sat on rooftops watching stars. Maya began hosting small poetry readings, her words resonating with others who carried invisible scars. And slowly she became known, not as the girl who smiled to hide her pain, but as the woman who smiled because she had survived. One day, as they walked through a quiet street lined with cherry blossoms, Rohan stopped her. "I lied that night," he said. Maya raised an eyebrow. "Which night?" "The one when I gave you that ring. I said it wasn't a proposal." She looked at him, heart fluttering. He knelt on one knee, pulling out a different ring, gold, simple, and full of promise. "This one is," he said. "You're not my healing story, Maya. You're my forever. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded, laughing and crying at once. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." People around them clapped, petals floating through the air like blessings. As he stood and held her close, she whispered, "You know, for the first time in my life, I think my smile finally means everything I want it to." And he smiled back. "It's the only smile I'll ever need."